LSL Stories. Copyright. The Whispering Shadows. Chapter 1. The Old House on the Hill. The town of Willow Creek was small and quiet, surrounded by thick forests and misty hills. At the edge of the town, on the highest hill, stood an old, abandoned house. No one had lived there for years, and the townspeople avoided it. They called it the Whispering House because, on cold, windy nights, they could hear strange sounds coming from the hill, like whispers carried by the wind. One autumn evening, 3 friends, Emma, Lucas, and Mia, were sitting in a small cafe in the town square. They were talking about the rumours they had heard about the house. "I don't believe in ghosts," Lucas said confidently, leaning back in his chair. He was always the brave one among them. "It's just an old house, there's nothing there." Mia shivered and shook her head. "But my grandmother told me that people disappeared there, strange things happened, and that's why nobody goes near it anymore." Emma, who was always curious and loved solving mysteries, leaned forward with a mischievous smile. "Why don't we go and see for ourselves?" she suggested. "Let's go tonight, it will be an adventure." Lucas grinned, ready for a challenge, but Mia hesitated. "I don't know. It sounds dangerous," she whispered. But after a few moments, her friends convinced her to join them. As the sun set and the moon rose, the 3 friends made their way up the hill. The path was dark, and the trees seemed to move with the wind, casting strange shadows. The air grew colder, and the night was silent, except for the occasional rustle of leaves. The house stood before them, dark and imposing, with broken windows and an old creaky door. Emma pushed the door open and it made a loud, eerie creak that echoed in the night. The inside of the house was even darker. Dust covered the floors and old furniture lay broken and forgotten. The walls were covered in strange, faded drawings. Suddenly, they heard a noise, a faint whisper. Mia gasped and grabbed Emma's arm. "Did you hear that?" she asked, her voice trembling. "It's just the wind," Lucas replied, trying to sound brave. But as they stepped further into the house, the whispers grew louder, and it felt as if they were coming from the walls themselves. Emma took out her flashlight and pointed it towards the end of the hallway. "Let's check upstairs," she said, her voice shaking with both fear and excitement. They climbed the old wooden staircase, which creaked with every step. As they reached the top, the whispers suddenly stopped. The silence was even more terrifying. The friends looked at each other, unsure of what to do next. Then, a cold wind blew through the house, and the door at the end of the hallway slammed shut by itself. Emma's flashlight flickered, and, for a moment, they were in complete darkness. "Let's go back," Mia whispered urgently. "I don't like this." But before they could move, they heard it again, a soft, low whisper, this time much closer. It sounded like a voice trying to speak, trying to tell them something. "What? What is that?" Lucas asked, his voice now filled with fear. Emma took a deep breath and shined her flashlight towards the door at the end of the hallway. "There's something in that room," she whispered. "We need to find out what it is." And so, with hearts pounding and breaths held, they slowly walked towards the door, not knowing what awaited them on the other side. Chapter 2. The Locked Room. The door loomed before them, its wooden surface covered in scratches, as if something had tried to claw its way out. The whispers were louder now, like a low murmur surrounding them, but they couldn't make out the words. The friends hesitated, their hands trembling as they reached for the doorknob. Emma was the first to grasp it. She turned the knob slowly, but it wouldn't budge. "It's locked," she said quietly, a mix of frustration and fear in her voice. Lucas, always ready to take action, stepped forward. "Maybe I can force it open," he suggested. He took a deep breath, then threw his shoulder against the door. It didn't move. He tried again, and this time the door creaked and groaned, but still refused to open. Mia looked around nervously. I don't think we should be doing this. What if there's something we're not supposed to find? Emma turned to her. There's something behind this door, she insisted. Something or someone who wants to be found. We need to know what it is. Just then, the whispering stopped, replaced by a strange, eerie silence. The air seemed to grow colder, and a sudden chill ran down their spines. Emma noticed something peculiar. A small, old-fashioned key hanging on a nail on the wall beside the door. It was covered in dust and cobwebs, as if it hadn't been touched in years. She reached for the key, her hand trembling. As she grabbed it, she felt a cold sensation, like ice against her skin. She hesitated for a moment, but then she turned to the others. I think this might be the key, she whispered. Lucas nodded, and Mia swallowed hard, clutching her coat tighter around her. Emma slowly inserted the key into the lock. It fit perfectly. She took a deep breath, turned the key, and heard a loud click as the door unlocked. The door creaked open, revealing a small, dark room. The air was thick, and a strange smell filled their noses, a mix of old wood, dust, and something else, something rotten. Emma shined her flashlight into the room, revealing a dusty old bed, a broken mirror, and an old wooden chest in the corner. Lucas stepped forward cautiously. It's just an old bedroom, he said, trying to sound calm, but his voice wavered. Mia's eyes were wide, darting around the room. But why was it locked? And what's that smell? Emma's flashlight focused on the chest in the corner. It was large, with iron clasps, and seemed out of place in the small room. Maybe the answers are in there, she suggested, moving slowly towards the chest. As she approached, the whispers began again, louder and clearer this time. They seemed to be saying something, but the words were jumbled, overlapping in a confusing chorus. She knelt beside the chest and hesitated, her hand hovering over the latch. Wait, Lucas said suddenly, grabbing her arm. Are you sure about this? We don't know what's in there. Emma looked at him, her face pale but determined. We've come this far, we need to see this through. With a final nod from Lucas, she lifted the latch and opened the chest. The lid creaked loudly, and a puff of dust rose into the air. Inside, there were old, tattered clothes, a few broken toys, and a small, leather-bound book. Emma reached for the book, picking it up carefully. It was cold to the touch, like the key, and covered in a strange, dark stain. She opened it, and her eyes widened. The pages were filled with messy handwriting, strange symbols, and drawings of dark figures and shadows. What is it? Mia asked, peering over Emma's shoulder. Emma read aloud from the first page. To whoever finds this, beware the shadows. They whisper secrets, but they lie. Do not listen. Do not follow. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind them with a loud bang, and the room was plunged into darkness. The whispers grew louder, filling their ears, and the air grew colder still. The friends huddled together, fear gripping their hearts. Then, from the shadows, a faint figure began to emerge, a dark silhouette standing at the far end of the room, its shape unclear, but its eyes glowed with a soft, eerie light. What is that? Lucas stammered, his voice barely a whisper. Emma clutched the book tightly, her hand trembling. I don't know, she whispered back, but I think we're not alone. The whispers intensified, and the figure began to move slowly toward them. Mia's voice cracked with terror. We need to get out of here. Now! Emma tried to open the door, but it was stuck, as if something was holding it shut from the other side. The figure moved closer, and the whispers grew louder, surrounding them from every direction. They were trapped, and the shadows seemed to be closing in. Chapter 3: The Escape. The figure moved closer, its glowing eyes fixed on them. The whispers were deafening now, filling the room with a chilling, ghostly chorus. The air grew colder still, and it felt as if invisible hands were wrapping around their throats, tightening with every second. Emma's hands shook as she frantically tried to turn the doorknob, but it wouldn't move. "It's stuck!" she shouted, panic rising in her voice. "Something is blocking it from the other side." Lucas grabbed the doorknob and pulled with all his strength, but the door remained shut. "Help me!" he yelled. Emma and Mia joined him, pushing and pulling, their breaths coming out in short gasps. But the door refused to open, as if the house itself wanted to keep them inside. The shadowy figure was only a few steps away now, and its whispers became clearer, like a raspy voice speaking directly into their ears. "Leave, or stay, forever," it hissed. The words echoed in their minds, twisting and turning like a snake. Mia began to cry, her fear overcoming her. "I don't want to stay here," she sobbed, her back pressed against the wall. "We need to get out, please." Emma, her mind racing, suddenly remembered the book she was holding. She opened it again, flipping through the pages with trembling hands, searching for something, anything that could help. Her eyes landed on a drawing of a symbol, a strange circle with intersecting lines and dots around it. Below the drawing, there was a line of text, written in red ink. "Draw this to reveal the truth. Speak the words to break the seal." "Lucas," Emma shouted over the whispers. "We need to draw this symbol on the floor, quickly." Lucas grabbed a piece of chalk from a small desk nearby and knelt on the floor. "Tell me what to draw," he demanded. Emma held the book close to his face, guiding his hand as he drew the strange symbol on the dusty wooden floor. The whispers grew louder and more furious, like a storm building around them. The figure seemed to flicker, becoming more shadow than substance, but it kept moving closer. "Hurry!" Mia cried, her voice almost lost in the chaos. "It's coming!" Lucas finished the last line of the symbol, and for a moment, everything went silent. The whispers stopped, and the figure stood still, watching them. Emma took a deep breath, trying to remember the words below the symbol. She could barely make them out in the dim light, but she spoke them aloud. "Spirits bound by shadows deep, release your hold, let secrets sleep." As soon as she finished, a strong wind rushed through the room, and the symbol on the floor began to glow with a soft blue light. The figure froze, its glowing eyes widening in surprise. The light spread, reaching the corners of the room, pushing the shadows back. The door behind them rattled, then flew open with a forceful bang. "Now, run!" Emma screamed. The three friends didn't hesitate. They rushed out of the room, their feet pounding down the stairs as the wind howled behind them. As they ran through the hallway, they could hear the whispers again, but now they were distant, almost fading away. The walls seemed to shake, and the windows rattled. Dust and debris fell around them, and it felt like the house itself was coming apart. Lucas was the first to reach the front door. He pulled it open, and they burst out into the cold night air, stumbling down the steps and into the yard. They didn't stop running until they reached the bottom of the hill, where they finally collapsed on the ground, gasping for breath. The old house on the hill stood silently against the moonlit sky, but now there were no whispers, no shadows moving in the windows. It looked like nothing more than an empty, abandoned building. Mia, still shaking, looked at Emma. What was that?" she whispered, her eyes wide with fear. Emma held up the book, her fingers still trembling. "I think this house, it's been keeping secrets for a long time. Maybe it wanted us to find it." Lucas stared up at the house, his face pale. "But why? Why us?" Emma shook her head, not having an answer. "I don't know," she replied softly. "But I think there is more to this place than we understand. Maybe the whispers were trying to warn us." As they sat there, catching their breath, the wind picked up again, and for a brief moment they thought they heard a faint whisper on the breeze, as if the house was saying goodbye. They knew they had escaped. But deep down, they also knew they would never be the same. The Whispering House had shown them its secrets, but it had also left them with a feeling they couldn't shake. A feeling that something or someone was still watching, waiting. And as the night grew darker, the old house stood on the hill, silent once more, but not forgotten.